Geek Vibes Live is rated G for geek.
Welcome once again to Geek Vibe Interview. I'm your host, Martin, and today we have the privilege of talking to a multi-talented actor, director, musician, and vocal performer, Fred Berman. Fred has appeared on Broadway, television, and recently directed the one-woman play Trans Am, starring Lisa Stephen Friday. Of course, I know him from his narration of over 250 audiobooks from Podium Publishing, including my favorite writer, Lindsay Burker, and her Star Kingdom series. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome Fred Berman to Geeks Vibe Live interview. How you doing, Fred? And thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How about yourself? How you doing?
Oh,
Staying safe
doing
and
good.
sane, I hope.
Yep. Just of course, fortunately, I don't have to work today. Got to go back to work tomorrow, but that's why this all worked out perfectly for me. Okay, let's start from the beginning. When exactly did you realize that you wanted to be a performer? Was that at an early age, and was being an actor always your aspiration?
Yeah, I think in the beginning it was more geared towards filmmaking. I thought it was the idea. I mean, like most people my age, Star Wars was a huge influence. And I mean, I saw that I was 5 years old when it came out, and then I was just became obsessed with the movies. And so I think there was always something in the back of my head that thought, okay, that's the world, somewhere in there that, now we know it as storytelling and fantasy, but that was sort of what got me into it. And then, in fact, I was actually just out to lunch with one of my oldest friends in the world, Damon, and we were just reminiscing. We grew up making movies all the time, starting with Super 8, and then when the big giant on the shoulder VHS cameras came out, we were making movies all the time. So that was always a part of my life. And then I started to get into theater when I was in junior high school. I mean, I did plays in elementary school, but you're sort of forced to do it. You don't really have a choice. Um, but my mom sort of nudged me into it once we got into junior high school. And I was like, all right, this is fun. I like being on stage, but I didn't feel it as a calling. And then around the time of my junior year of high school, I was hanging out with some kids who were a little older than me, and one or two in particular really started to introduce me to like Scorsese and De Niro, and that this whole other world of filmmaking and art that I didn't really have an idea about. And that was around the idea where it really sort of that was around the time where it really took hold for me. I remember watching Taxi Driver, and that was the movie, which is sort of a strange movie to be obsessed with. That could have some weird connotations, but that was a movie that I watched, and I remember going, huh. And I took the VCR out, the tape out, and I said, no, and I put it back in, and I rewound, and I watched it again. And that's when the idea of what it really means to be an actor sort of took hold, and thinking, oh, there's a little more to this than I thought. And around that time, originally I thought I was going to go to school for communications and filmmaking, and that was around the time when I thought, no, I think I'm being pulled in another direction. And so I went to school for theater, and that was really where it took off.
So, I mean, so you've done off-Broadway plays and things like that, but then, let's say about 10 years ago, you finally got Broadway. You got
Yeah.
the Lion King. I imagine, especially now after 10 years, that was disappointing when the COVID thing just kind of ground everything to a halt.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, no, it sucked. It's like anyone. I mean, it's not just for I mean, everyone's going through the same thing, which is such an interesting, that's fascinating in itself, because I remember years ago when the economy tanked, the big real estate bubble burst, and a lot of people were losing jobs, and it was an awful time for a lot of people. It didn't really affect me because I was and a lot of me and my friends, because we lose jobs every couple months, every time a gig is over. So I didn't really get it. People were talking about it like, this is awful. I'm like, I just lost a job. I'm going on to another job. Not diminishing it at all. So it's interesting now. I mean, not interesting. I don't wish it on anyone, but everyone's sort of in the same boat where everything stopped.
Right.
Unfortunately, thankfully for other people, things are coming back and people are able to work. For theater, it's we can't do it. And unfortunately, I was just talking to my buddy earlier, like I think theater is gonna be the last thing that comes back. Just because it's the hardest logistically, it's gonna be the hardest thing to navigate. So yeah, that was rough. I mean, I remember being in the theater and I tend to get, I think the movie the movie Outbreak screwed me up years ago. And when I saw that, so I've always had this fear of pandemics and like disaster movies in general. You know, my friends would always give me shit. They'd be like, what are you most scared of? And I said, an asteroid hitting the earth. And I think they thought I was joking, but I'm like, no, it could happen. I've seen enough movies. So when I started to hear the news coming out of China, I really started to get a little worried, and my friends were sort of, giving me crap about it. And then when it happened, I think we all thought, well, it'll be, a couple weeks, and then we'll all be back in the theater. So, I mean, I was saying, I've been back in my this is my dressing room. That's been my office for the last 10 years, and I haven't been back in it in over a year now, and it's, very strange. So I I'm starting to get a little more optimistic, but I really hope that theater comes back. And when it will come back, and it'll come back strong. And I think people are craving live entertainment and that release and that catharsis. So, but yeah, it's
Of course, the advantage you have, of course, is that you got other things on the hopper that you do. I think recently I noticed that you directed a play, Trans Am. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, that was great. That was one of those wonderful opportunities that came out of such an unfortunate situation. Uh, it's sort of a long story, but I'll try to
That's
condense
all
it.
right. You
So
go.
one of my best friends in the world, Lisa Friday, Lisa came out as trans several decades ago. I mean, well, she's always been trans, but she came out to me years ago. When we first met, I was doing a show called The Buddy Holly Story, and it was about Buddy Holly, and I played Jerry Allison, the drummer in the Crickets, because I'm a drummer as well. And I met another actor, Steve Friday, who is the bass player. And we became very close. We did a national tour. We lived together. We were roommates. And we each had separate bands at the time. He had the Steve Friday band. I had my own band. And then somewhere along there, Steve sort of sat us down as a band and said, I want you to meet Lisa Jackson. And because he had been dressing up and as a woman. And first it was sort of introduced as I think I might be transvestite. And we said, do you want to do drag? No, I like wearing women's clothes. That was sort of just the tiptoeing out. But really she has been trans her whole life. So this was back in the late 90s, and she's made a full transition since then. And we played in a band together for many years called Lisa Jackson and Girl Friday. It started when she first transitioned, and we had a really a great following here in New York. And then we broke up. We didn't talk for 10 years. It was, classic cliche rock and roll stuff. Anyway, we've been back in touch for a while now. And right before the pandemic, Lisa was supposed to do a production of Hedwig and the Angry Inch in Washington, D.C., where she lives right now.
Right.
And her theater got shut down. So they were trying to figure out some things they could do. And she started to do a little writing, and she wrote sort of like a one-woman cabaret. She did it. And then when it was coming to the fall, the theater said, hey, we want to do a virtual rep, try to bring theater back. And I don't know whose idea it was, but the idea was, would you be interested in expanding this and turning it from a cabaret into a show? And thankfully, I'm very grateful for her. She said, yeah, I want to do it. And I want to ask my friend Fred to help me and direct it. So, just because we have so much history together.
Right.
And it was great. So, I was here in New York. Thankfully, I had all this free time, and she was in DC. I was here. Zoom was becoming a thing at that point. So we did the majority of our rehearsals, just like we're talking right now. I went down, she came here, we rehearsed a little in my basement. I went there in the theater, and we did about a month-long run of it virtually. and it was great. And we were actually just talking yesterday, you know, we're already making plans about, you know, where it's going to go next once theaters start to open. And it was very, very exciting to go through that journey with her, and to see it fully realized on the stage. So that was a blast. And it was really my first time. I directed things here and there. I directed some stuff years ago, but this was the first time in a while, and to have like a full production team behind me, and that was great. It was really one of the most fulfilling experiences I've had. And you know, thankfully, again, with this unfortunate experience, it was nice to be able to create something new and exciting.
And I thought it was cool that you were streaming. Like you said, you were still kind of carrying on. And of course, the minute after I learned about it, I went ahead and looked up the group and saw a video. Matter of fact, you were in it playing the drums.
Yeah.
It's good music too. So
Yeah, it's good
I was
stuff.
kind
We're
of
trying to, you know, we broke up before the age of Spotify and everything. So now people, you know, we always have people being like, where can I find your music? Where can I find your music? And we're like, oh, well, I guess we gotta we gotta get it all out there now, you know.
I thought it was very interesting. Like I said, all the stuff I learned just after you agreed to talk to me. I said, "Oh, wait a minute, let me look up and see what else do I know besides reading my favorite books." Okay, so speaking of that, you know, because of course, like I said, you've been doing both voiceover and narration work for quite a while.
Yeah.
You've done video games, you've done animated series, and of course, you've done book narration. Is there a different? What's involved in each of those? Is it very similar? Or is it different?
Um, I mean, the audiobook narration is the most difficult because there's so much material. Well, no, I should say the video games can be pretty difficult only because there can be a lot of screaming involved. It can be very taxing on your voice. And actually the union SAG after they really went to bat for actors on that. I think it was a year ago. There was a strike involved, and really trying to get more protection for actors, because I remember when I first started doing it, I mean, there, you know, especially in some of the more violent video games are like, all right, you know, you're dying, you're being shot. Okay, now you're being thrown off a cliff. Now you're being blown up, you know, so it's like different
Right.
screams for all these different scenarios. So that's tough just in terms of that. But the audiobook narrations just, you know, especially, you know, if it's a lengthy book, you know, you're in the booth for, you know, it's a full 8-hour day. And you're also, what's challenging about that is, you know, usually as an actor, when you come into any project, you're playing your role. You know, you're this part of the story. So, and where do you fit into that story? When you're an audiobook and when you're doing an entire book, you're telling the whole story. So it's, especially if it's, you know, there's a lot of research that goes into it, you know, looking up, am I pronouncing everything correctly? Especially, I just did a book about World War II, fascinating book called War of Shadows, about the war in the Middle East. And oh my God, it was just pages and pages and pages of notes getting the pronunciation, because you know, you don't want to screw that up. And I've done that before. I think every audiobook narrator has finished a book and been like, oh my God, I mispronounced something, you know, and you got to go back and or, you know, a listener will get in touch with you and be like, hey, great job. FYI, you miss it. Oh my God. So it's that. And then if it's a work of fiction, like with the Star Kingdom series, you know, just, you know, it's not just one character you're doing, as I would in a play or in a film or television. It's all the characters. And so it's a great challenge. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun, but it's a great, it's a really big responsibility. And it's also, you feel really responsible to the author to make sure you're telling their entire story. So I want to make sure that I'm doing them right. And also, especially if it's a series or a beloved author, you want to make sure that, you know, you're doing right by the fans. I mean, you're never going to please everyone, but so so there seems to be there's a lot more. I feel a lot more pressure when I'm doing the audiobooks than with some of the other stuff.
And I didn't really think about it like that. So, has there ever been a book that they offered you to do that it kind of intimidated you, either by the subject or by how like personal connection you might have had to it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I mean, there are books. There's only I've never there's one book that I turned down, which I've never done. I've been very, very lucky that, knock on wood, that I of all the books I've done, there's never been like a real, in my opinion, there's never been something that I'm like, oh my God, this is horrendous. Like I've been able to find something really interesting and fun about all the books, which is I'm very grateful for. There's only been one book that I had to turn down just because there was some stuff in it that I didn't feel comfortable, and not much turns me off, but there was just some. There was some stuff that I found a bit racist, and I was like, I just didn't feel comfortable. Uh, I didn't feel comfortable doing it. But so that was one instance. But yeah, in terms of being intimidated, yeah, I did Charlie Kaufman's first book, Ant Kind, which is I'm a huge Charlie Kaufman fan. And I was thrilled to get the opportunity to do it, but it was terrifying as well because I thought, holy shit, it's Charlie Kaufman, and I know there are other huge Charlie Kaufman fans, and I don't want to mess this up. And when I've taken on series, especially like science fiction series, I know there's such a, the fans are so, or I did the Walking Dead series,
Right.
that which I loved because I was a huge fan of the show and the comics. But it was very intimidating because again, I don't want to mess this up. You sort of have to throw that out and say, look, I was hired for a reason. I've got to do, not everyone's going to love it. And I just got to dive into it and make the choices what I feel are correct. So yeah, there's always an intimidation. My friend Oliver Wyman, who's also a wonderful audiobook narrator, he always says, the scariest part of any book or any, part of work is chapter one. And he's absolutely right. That moment when you first start and you go, oh God, I'm in it now. Yeah, it's always intimidating.
I think I wasn't sure. Like it's like, I was looking through the list of books you've done, and I saw the one on Robin Williams. I'm thinking that would be intimidating to me, especially someone who that's what they did is they did voices and things.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. You just brought back all those emotions of being intimidated and yeah, it's funny. I actually had the opportunity to talk to Dave Itzkoff. I have a podcast that I do with two of my best friends, and it's a movie podcast called Opening Weekend, and we were talking about Good Morning Vietnam, and I thought, let me see if Dave would want to talk about that, and I got in touch with him, and we were talking about that. My buddy Jason, who's one of the co-hosts of the podcast, brought that up because he read the book and he thought, wow, I didn't realize, because there's a lot of, quotes and stuff from his material. And he thought, oh my God, like, did you have to do Robin? And Dave and I were talking about that, how it was, when I first got offered the book, it was that was something that really scared me. What do I do? And Dave mentioned that was really on his mind as well. And he was happy that, myself and the producers found we found a nice place for it where, there's no way you can't imitate Robin Williams. I mean, you can, but I didn't think it was going to work. But there's a cadence, but you also can't just read it completely straight because there's a cadence that he has, and everyone knows the Robin Williams cadence. So it was just finding that fine line, but it was very scary because once you, as I was saying to Dave and the guys on the podcast, once you start doing it, you start to fall more and more into Robin's cadence. And I was very worried about, I don't want to go too far into it because then it just might sound ridiculous. Right. But you still want to honor his genius and how he delivered these, this material.
Okay, so of course the main reason that I originally got a hold of you was Star Kingdom, because I'm a big fan of Lindsay. Like I said, I talked to Lindsay in September of last year, and cool. We talked a little bit about the audiobooks, and she said that she didn't really have a whole lot of say in who read her books, but she said, Podium's never let her down. They've always been really great, and especially in your case. Cool. And one of the things I noticed in how you read books, of course, I've said at this point I've only listened to the Star Kingdom series, is you do women's voices a little differently than most people. Most males I've heard is you don't sit there and try to raise your pitch or anything. You just kind of soften her voice and then give whatever accent that she talks into, which I actually found very soothing to the ear. I mean, it didn't sound like you were straining to do a female voice. Is that your normal approach when you're dealing with a female character?
Yeah, usually. I mean, I I was very, very lucky that when I first started to do audiobooks, I started right off the bat, and I started about 15 years ago. Right off the bat, I was working with some really wonderful directors who, right in the beginning, sort of gave me a template of how to do it and how to approach it. And thankfully, in my opinion, it was the right way to I mean, there's no everyone's got their own way, but for
Right.
me, it worked. And they mentioned that, because I said, I remember in the very first book I ever did, I wasn't really sure, how do I approach the female characters? And I knew instinctively it didn't seem right to suddenly, do like this crazy high pitched voice. But they said, just maybe just raise it up a little bit. Just think of it with different inflections. And what I always try to do, and I think helps, and I do this with every character, but it especially helps with the female characters, is I try to cast the characters ahead of time, whether with, you know, famous actors, actors in movies or TV, or with people that I know. I'll say, okay, this character is, my neighbor so and so, this female neighbor, or this teacher that I know, and or Judy Dench or Angelina Jolie or whoever. I'll put it in my head, who would it be? And then I won't necessarily try to imitate them, but I have that feeling already in my head and body, and I won't necessarily, unless it's like a really particular accent, I won't necessarily practice it beforehand. I like to just go on instinct sometime. I'll just start and see. The nice thing about recording audiobooks, you can stop and start. So it's
Right.
not like theater, like you just go out and do it and then that's it. Everyone's watching it. So if it works, great. If it doesn't, I say, all right, let's go back and try it again. But I like to do it very instinctually and see where it goes. And so again, it's just sort of taking the idea of, okay, I'm not going to impersonate, let's say, Judy Dench, but that's who I have in mind. Let's see where that goes. And again, it's one of those things where you never know. I've had people who really they enjoy it, like yourself, thankfully,
Right.
and then other people who they want something different, or they don't want any voices. They want it completely flat. And it's also from book to book, finding how far you can go. And but for me, it's mostly trying to just tell the story as honestly as I can without getting too distracting with crazy character voices. Um, depending on the book, sometimes it calls for that. But obviously I'm not a female. So, but I want to portray the female characters as honestly as I can without turning it into a caricature.
Right. Of course, now my favorite character in this book is Kazimir Dabrowski for
Oh
obvious
yeah.
reasons. He's basically me. He's a 5'8". I'm 57 years old and still talking about comic books.
Yep.
And different medical ailments, but giant heart, doesn't want to hurt a soul. And you bring all that out. And in
Okay.
fact, some of my favorite lines in the books is when Casimir is just, like toward the end there, where he's getting all giddy about thinking of Princess Aku, and you bring it out in your voice. And I laugh every time I listen to it. In fact, right before we started talking, I played it for my wife, and she started laughing because he said he sounds practically like a guy that knows that he's dating kind of out of his class, but
Yeah.
she's going for him anyway.
Yeah. It's that. I mean, yeah, you're right. Casimir, he's the heart of those books. And that's what I found, when Podium first, got in touch with me and asked me to do them. And and I read the first book immediately. I was like, oh, I know this guy. Same thing. I was like, oh, okay. He's yeah. And I love that he's the eternal optimist, and he gets excited about, he's got these loves in electronics and comic books and and robotics, and he's got giddy is the perfect word. He just gets giddy about that, and he talks a mile a minute and he gets nervous. And I think yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. And it's also refreshing to see a character like that in in a science fiction adventure series. And that's what I love about these books is, you look at the covers at least, and uh, on face value, it's like spaceships and things blowing up and adventure, and there is all that, but it's really just about geeks in space. It's about smart people, using their brains and their humor and their compassion, to get, and that's what I really love about the writing. It really, yes, there's excitement and there's adventure and there's battles and there's fights, but those are almost pushed to the side. It's really like the minutia of the science and all the little things that's what sort of takes the forefront in this series, which I really like. And Casimir's, I love all the characters in the book. They're all a lot of fun for me, and I'm really happy. There's never a character, especially as I got to the last book through the series, that you get to and you go, oh no, I forgot that I voiced this character this way. I have to do it that way. Damn it. I wish I can go. Like, I love all the characters. I'm happy where the places I found for them. I feel like, especially with the series, with any book, when you start, you'll start a character here, and by the end, you find, after recording a couple of days, their voices change a little, things change a little bit because you've grown with them. And especially with the series, you can make that, like, I love, I don't know if you watch WandaVision, or if you're an
Yes.
MCU guy.
Yep. We do a podcast every Saturday night.
Oh my God. I mean, my family and I we're huge into the MCU. That's the
Right.
thing, and I love how they're making comments about Wanda's accent, how it's sort of disappeared, and that's what I love about Kevin Feige and the MCU. They're not afraid to retcon things. They're not afraid to say, okay, this was good, but we're going to change things up just a little bit, and that's sort of with a series, you tend to do that as well. So that's changed, but not so much with this. I really enjoy all the characters. But Casimir's always been my favorite because he's like, when I'm like, oh, I just have to talk like me. He's just me. When I get excited about something.
That's actually why I wondered. I actually wondered, said, so when you do Casimir, are you just doing Fred?
Yeah,
because
it's like me talking about comic books, or the the last Rush tour that I saw, or whatever it is. It's like I take that excitement of the things that get me excited, like I'm getting now, and I put that into Casimir. So that's why I appreciated that character. I was like, oh, I know how to do him. I get it.
Yeah, and it's funny that you said that, because that was going to be one of my next questions is, when you've done an 8-book series, and maybe say there's a year in between book 7 and book 8, do you have to go back and remind yourself, okay, how did I do those characters? Because, I've been doing other things since then. I love characters, but I need to go back and listen to see exactly how I was handling each of these characters. So I don't, as you say, so I don't screw it up. Because, again, fans will be the first one to tell you if that's not what that person sounded like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. With this one, thankfully, and again, knock on wood, I've always been able to retain character notes like that from book to books over long periods of time for like the main characters. I do take notes. I had a really, really scary experience with this series where, I do everything on my iPad. I have a program called iAnnotate. So I keep it's all there. It's all digital. And I keep all my notes and I save them in a Dropbox. Something happened when I updated iAnnotate, and I lost all my notes for the first couple books. I was like, oh my God. And for the main characters, it wasn't a problem. I remembered, but there were a few that come in and I'm going, I think I did it this way, so luckily Podium, I got in touch with Podium. I was like, I'm in a bind here. Can you send me the original? They have everything. So they sent me some files and I went back and I listened. There was a great instance. There was another series I did, a wonderful writer named Morgan Rhodes. And she has a series called the Fallen Kingdom series that I did. And it was very like sort of Game of Thrones for young adults, fantasy, really wonderful series. And I got in touch with a woman who had, like yourself, was, read, listened to the audiobook series, got in touch with me. We became friendly. And I remember the same thing happened. There was this one character that I thought I made a note about. And I went back and I'm going, oh my God, there's no note. Where is it? And I guess I assumed that character would never come back, but it did in sort of a big way. And so I sent her a message. I said, hey, do you remember by chance, did I do this character with a British accent? And she went back, she listened to it, and she totally saved my butt there. But yeah, that's always a fear when a book comes back, just thinking. And so now I've gotten good with it. Now I always assume with every book, I always assume there's going to be a sequel somewhere down the line, even if there's not, just to make sure.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm almost done here. Well, let me ask you this. If I were to play you an audio clip from Star Kingdom, could you tell me who the speakers were as far as the narration goes?
Let's give it a whirl. Yeah.
Okay. And just so we're clear on this, right before I talked to you, I called Podium. They said this was cool. I could do this.
Oh, awesome. I love Podium.
Yeah, so they were great. They were actually, I said, hey, you want to review some more stuff? So we'll get to that.
That's great.
So,
Have you managed to have your coffee date with her yet? We played video games and had fizz up in my apartment. His goofy grin grew even wider. Romantic. It was. I found the game in which an outcast botanist saves a space habitat from a sentient plant taking over through the ventilation system by finding a way to communicate with it and establish a symbiotic relationship between the human and the plant. I bet that's a bestseller. No, but she liked it. She said she would send the creator grant money for educational games. And then she kissed me. On the cheek. No!
That's Casimir and Kim.
yeah, I say every time I listen to it, I laugh because he's just so excited.
Yeah, and I love that. That was always fun. I mean, and it's all how Lindsay wrote it, but just the the juxtaposition between those two characters and how they speak was always a lot of fun. Just how it was written too, and then to be able to sort of come up, to voice them, and Kim's sort of just flat monotone,
Right.
but still, still
she does
full of
deadpan
heart.
better than anybody.
Oh yeah, they're all such great characters. I mean, I was really sort of bummed when the series came to an end. Hopefully there's more to come,
From what Lindsay's talking about, especially like in the main event, Cannabis Raw, she's going to be doing some more books in that series because she said this was really popular. And
yeah,
I agree.
That would be great. Yeah, because it was a great one. That was one that I always looked forward to. And Podium's the best. I mean, it's I really I enjoy doing work with them.
I know they were really nice about me asking, and I really didn't expect them to get back to me that quick.
They're a Canadian company, so I just feel like they have to be nice. They're Canadian. I mean, they really are. I mean, right from the moment they got in touch with me about this series, I'm like, oh my God, you're the nicest people I've ever met.
They said, yeah, let us know when you're going to put it on, and we'll spread it ourselves. Cool, do that.
Yeah, they're great. No, I have nothing but great things to say about Podium, and I'm so grateful that they have me as their in their roster of narrators and actors there, because they're great. And I love the.
Well, I think that's what sold them, because I told them I was interviewing you. Said, "Oh, we love Fred."
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, they've given me some really great series to do, so it's a lot of fun. Who's this?
Greetings, my sexy laser. Strange things have been happening at Forseti Station. Are you still out there? Yes, and I'm in a little trouble. I don't suppose you have the power to order a bunch of soldiers to leave my ship alone, or even to order them to get some chickens on a stick in the concourse so I can slip away? I'm displeased to hear that you're in trouble. Unfortunately, my own status is nebulous at the moment. As a disgraced knight in exile, my ability to give orders and have them obeyed has lessened of late.
Yes, Bjarka and Bonita.
Bjarka,
Bjarka was always fun for me. I always pictured like Brian Cox doing that. That was it's like this randy older guy. Yeah, Bjarka was always fun, and the twist too.
And of course, no offense, but you do Pompous really well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's see. Let me find the other one now.
Yes, sire? Rach is working with the Astro Shamans against us. He's damaged my ship greatly and doesn't seem to care that we've damaged his just as much. Call him off. and we'll help get the astro shamans off you and drive them off our planet. Figure out a way to get rid of him, or you'll be as dead as the rest of us. Help us, and I'll grant you a pardon for your crimes.
That's Jaeger there.
Yeah, I said there's always a character in Lindsay's books that I just want to eject out of a airlock, and Jaeger was actually this particular series has got a bunch of them, but Jaeger was one of them.
Oh yeah, he's he was always so I remember when it morphed a little bit, but in the beginning, again in terms of like how I was casting them, I kept thinking Ben Mendelsohn from like Rogue One.
Yeah.
Onita? What is going on? I was hoping you could tell me, she murmured back, the footsteps in the hold still audible. I had the most dreadful experience. With no warning whatsoever, all of my systems were shut down and I lost all awareness. The power went out. It was terrible. It sounds the same as falling asleep. You remember that, don't you? Vaguely. Why are there soldiers stalking through my corridors and banging on my walls? Does this have something to do with you crouching in the freezer?
Yeah, well, speaking of WandaVision, that's Vigo's Paul Bettany there. That's that's Vision. That's your very own,
Yes,
Jarvis right there.
That's he's funny that right. It was basically like going to sleep, but I guess that in 1,000 years he hadn't remember what that was like.
Yeah.
But that's all I got for you. You got anything new coming up down the pike you want to talk about?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this. I mean, it seems like everyone's got a podcast now, but that's been sort of the thing that's been keeping me sane this entire pandemic. I have a podcast that I started with two of my best friends, Jason O'Connell and Dan Matisse. It's called Opening Weekend. And we started that right when things started. And we go back. My friend Jason has always had an encyclopedic knowledge of, you can name any movie and he can tell you exactly when it came out, like the weekend, the month, the year. So, and we would always go see movies together. So that's sort of the premise of the podcast, is that every week we go back to that week from a different year and talk about the movies that came out. And we talk about the movies, but it's really also just about like where we were. And it's really been fun and therapeutic and nostalgic. And we've been having a blast just going back, over the last 40 some odd years. So we do that every week with the website openingweekendpodcast.com. We're on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music, and it's really a lot of fun. So I've been doing that. More audiobooks coming up, thankfully. I have what did I just finish? Although I don't know if I can actually talk about them. I never really know what books I can talk about until they come out. But that thankfully has been keeping me very busy, being able to do the audiobooks from home, which I was very, very lucky that I had a setup already. So once things shut down, I was able just to keep doing that, from my closet and then to an actual booth in my house. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, hopefully we'll be doing more things with Trans Am, which should be good and getting out there. But right now, yeah, the big thing that it's been, I've been having the most fun with has been Opening Weekend. That's been really great. And just being able, it's been, like I'm sure you can relate to, with your podcast and what we were talking about with WandaVision. It's fun just to hang out with your friends every week, know, and talk about the stuff you love. And I was saying like, wow, we hang out more now than we did when we could see each other in person.
Right.
That's been every week. I look for, like, we're recording an episode tonight. And yeah, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
He said, well, if you ever, I'm not sure exactly why you'd be sitting around the house at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, but if you do, he said we'll be talking about the last episode then. Heck,
No, definitely.
I'll say if you want to
check it out,
let us know. We'll let you in. Said we got pretty much anywhere from 8 to 10 people that'll come in there, depending on how busy people are. but it's a lot of fun,
Oh,
and we're
wow.
going to continue to do it. Once Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out, we'll start talking about them. Just we got a whole bunch to look forward to, so we're going to be talking about it all. But I really appreciate it, Fred, and we look forward to following what you got going on the next time. I said, and yeah, by all means, give us a follow.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate you reaching out, and like I said, I love the website, so I can't wait to keep exploring it more.
All right, very good. Well, you have a good one.
Thank you. You too, Martin.